Okay, so it's my honor to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Elisa Vilhunen from University of Helsinki. Elisa works as postdoctoral researcher on the research project Learning of the Competencies of Effective Climate Change Integration and Adaptation in the Education Systems in the Faculty of Educational Sciences at University of Helsinki. She is also a visiting researcher at Aalto University in Espoo. Her main research interests lie at the intersections of science education and educational psychology. Currently, her research focuses on students' engagement and emotions in climate education. Elisa has a background in secondary education as a science teacher and a school counselor. And today, our talks focus on understanding the factors influencing upper secondary school students' STEM career aspiration. So, Elisa, happy birthday, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Shelley, and thank you, Mia and Jari, for inviting me and giving the opportunity to talk about the students' career aspirations. And thank you, Barbara, for the very nice introduction for my talk. So we are continuing with the same topic. So my topic is about factors influencing upper secondary school students' STEM career aspirations. So we will be hearing actually some empirical data, some preliminary findings on the interview study that we have conducted. But before going any further, I would like you to do some thinking work also. So think about for a moment, how did you choose your career? What were the factors that actually affected that you became a scientist or a science teacher or whatever you became? But think about it for a moment, and once you come up with at least some answer, probably you all have many things in your mind, but share it with the person next to you, and then we will continue. Thank you. Let's continue. Sorry to interrupt. It sounds like you have a lot of information about the topic already, but let's see if they were correct answers. So we have this social cognitive career theory that explains a lot about students' career decisions. What are the factors actually affecting students' career behavior? So in the middle of the model, we have interest, one of the key concepts of the or the factors influencing students' career choices. How many of you were talking about interest? Quite many hands, I see. Also, then of course the question is, where does the interest come from? So the theory suggests that self-efficacy, so how good you are at things, or can I do this, they have an effect on your interest. But also outcome expectations have an effect, meaning that if I do this, what will happen, basically. And then interest has an effect on our choices. What do we end up doing? And then again, they have an effect on performance outcomes. For example, goal attainment or skill development. But for me, as a science teacher, I found the first box probably the most interesting. So where do the self-efficacy beliefs or outcome expectations actually come from? So of course there are many different factors affecting them, but for me, learning experiences is something very important, and that's something that we can actually, as teachers, have an influence on. And based on previous research, we also know a lot of things that actually influenced students' STEM-related career choices. We know that other people's recognition and STEM identity might have an effect on the choices. Receiving career information sounds quite relevant. Preconceptions about STEM careers and instructional activities in school. So in this study, the study that we conducted last year in an upper secondary school, we aim to examine the students' conceptions about careers on STEM-related fields and understand factors influencing their career choices. And we were studying upper secondary school students because that's quite an important phase in one's life. That's when you actually do a lot of decisions concerning your career. We conducted semi-structured interviews with 10 second and third year upper secondary school students. They were all more or less into STEM, somehow STEM-oriented students. And I asked them about their career aspirations in general and about the factors that have influenced the career decisions and their conceptions about the desired education or profession. We have the interviews and they have been transcribed and so on. And now we have some preliminary findings, but we are still planning to make a rigorous inductive content analysis based on that. So first, few words about the participants. So already prior to the interviews, we asked using a questionnaire about their desired education or profession. And based on those answers, we chose the 10 participants to take part in the interviews. So 4 of the students said that they want to have a career in engineering and technology. 3 of the students said that they want to go to a medical school to be a doctor. 2 were talking something about environmental sciences. Those were quite like vague ideas still. And then we had 1 student who was very into aerodynamics and wanted to be a pilot. Loved physics and math. A few words maybe about the context and the school. So they are from one upper secondary school in Finland, and it's a school with quite high achieving students. So they actually, they can choose to go to a medical school or technology and engineering. So they're good students in general. So let's go to the quotations. I've chosen quite a few, actually, some quotations to show you that reflect students thinking about this issue. Let's see how many of them we have time to go through. But let's start. So there's the translated quotation on top and the original Finnish version, if there's someone in the audience who happens to understand. And in the bottom you see the pseudonymized name, so don't worry about the names, I've taken care of it, and the field that they have said they will be interested pursuing. So Ada was an interesting student. She had come up with the idea about engineering and technology quite recently, so it wasn't something that she had in her mind for years, but just quite recently she realized that it's something she might want to do. And she said that, or when I asked, like, why didn't she think about it as a relevant option earlier, she answered that, I thought it's quite boring and somehow distant from everything, like life and such. I was really interested in health and those kind of everyday things, so then it always goes a bit like somehow farther away or looks at things either very really narrowly or, and maybe in those technical fields there's a bit of an image that everyone is a super nerd sitting on their computer for 12 hours a day and all that. As a science teacher, I was not super happy hearing this, this conception about STEM careers in engineering and technology, especially hearing that it's somehow distant from everything, distant from everyday things. It's totally something that I wouldn't want to hear, because that's exactly something that we should be working on as science teachers in the classrooms, that students really get the point of doing science. I'm sure we also have an opinion about the nerd issue, but let's not go to that now. Then we have Julius, who also wanted to be doing engineering and technology. He talks about that in middle school everything was kind of easy, but in high school I realized that I understand also physics, and it plays quite an important role in the world. It enables you to make an impact on the world, like, for example, things to do with energy. Those are important topics. So it's quite an opposite for the previous quotation, and it's quite typical what students answered when I asked them, why do you want to do what you want to do? So quite often they talked about the self-efficacy, that I'm good at it, it's easy, so I think it would be worthwhile doing it. But also quite many students did tell something about the values and like wanting to make an impact on the world. So as we discussed earlier, it's for the students nowadays, it's not just about the money or something like that, but they really want to do something that's meaningful, that they can really change things. So it seems that as a science teachers, that's something we should keep in mind, that it is actually something that you can use to make an impact. Then we have a quote from Ada again. She said something that it's also a bit sad, that fields related to engineering and technology aren't something you hear about or immediately think of, like a doctor or a teacher. So you probably learn more about them in school and guidance counseling in high school and so. So this is also something that actually quite many students were discussing, not the ones going to the medical school, but many students who were pursuing a career in engineering and technology. They were talking that it's very like a vague idea, like what does it even mean if I go to study engineering and technology? What is it in practice? What could I do with that education? So apparently students also feel that you don't even learn that at school, but guidance counselors or whoever teachers that they talk to, they tend to focus on being a doctor or a teacher or a lawyer or maybe economics, as we heard earlier. So I'm sure we all see the problem here, that engineering and technology, it is such a giant field in that sense. So it's not easy for students to see the future, the outcome expectations, behind that education. Then, continuing a bit further, Elisa was talking about teacher. I asked from all the students if either family or peers or teacher in school has somehow influenced their career aspirations. And Elisa was the only one out of the 10 participants who said that teacher or teaching actually had an impact. Others were talking about friends or family, but and said that no, teacher had no role. But Elisa was someone who was very happy with the geography teacher, actually. So she said that in every class there was this opportunity for everyone to ask questions. And then there were also those moments when we were just discussing together about a task or something like that. Those teaching styles were something else compared to anything I had seen before, so it made even sometimes dull topics sound really interesting. And then it became like, oh, I'm actually interested in this. So I was very happy to hear this, but then again, I was sad that no one else actually talked about teachers. Except when saying that no, teachers had zero role. So from Julius, also I asked if other people had some impact on them, if they had like recognized them as STEM person or like reinforcing the identity. So Julius says that maybe people in a way, like when they say that you really understand and stuff. And then he said that not directly from teachers, but of course, if you get almost full marks in a course exam, then it's like, of course, that reinforces it, the STEM identity. So that's also, I was a bit surprised that students and teachers don't actually have those discussions with each other, that teachers would reinforce the STEM identity or the self-efficacy beliefs by a speech in the classrooms, but only by giving marks in the exam. Then Miska wanted to have a career in medicine. And this is quite a typical answer also, that many students, they were talking about family, how dad or brother or sister or uncle or whoever had an impact on their career decision. So it's quite typical that people who want to go to medical school, they have a parent in medicine also. And it's been since I was about 5 years old, as my dad is a doctor. So what we heard that many people, especially the ones who want to do the doctor or teacher or lawyer profession, they already knew it from the very beginning, in a sense. He also did an internship, I'm not sure how it should be called in English, in the middle school at the hospital watching surgeries, and it was quite nice. So in Finland we have this program within school education that people go to 1 or 2 weeks during the middle school to see some jobs. It's like job shadowing, or I'm not sure what would be the accurate term to call it, but anyway, they have an opportunity to actually go to a workplace. He also makes a good point in the end of the quote. I'm not sure if I'll get in, so I have to consider other options as well. So it is quite difficult to get into many educational programs, so they are also quite realistic often with the opportunities. So students do consider many things. Let's skip these and let's go here, so we have time. So based on the interviews, it's quite clear that we have some issues to consider. when aiming to get more students into STEM careers. So first of all, promoting self-efficacy and interest seems very vital, no surprise. But that's something that we as science teachers, we need to keep in mind. We also need to keep in mind that students don't often have very realistic perception of or conception of STEM-related jobs or careers. So it's just not something for super nerds. It's not, or it is related to real-world problems. It's not just sitting on a computer alone for 12 hours, but there are actually a lot of variety and a lot of interesting opportunities to do. And also many students were talking that they don't actually have information on what it takes to have a career in STEM. Like what are the next steps after the high school if I want to do science or engineering. And then I want to give you some recommendations how to overcome these issues. First is instructional approaches, how to actually teach science to overcome at least some of these issues. And for example, project-based learning is something that we know that it can promote self-efficacy and interest in science. It can also enhance or give more realistic perception of STEM-related jobs through the scientific practices. Then it seems very important to have some sort of work education integration also within the science learning context. For example, job shadowing internships, visits to other institutions, universities, or having visitors in the classrooms. And finally, I've named this as guidance and counseling approaches, but by that I mean things that teacher can do in a classroom or outside the classroom, but how to discuss with the students, with other adults in the school. So you can actually, there's a lot of room within the lessons to discuss with students, that you can have opportunities to actually reinforce them STEM identity. You can also provide actual information on STEM careers. And I would say it's also very important to collaborate with the school counselor or whoever is the one working with those issues in your school, because they don't know everything, no one knows everything, so we as science teachers, we have to keep our flag high. That's it. I have some references in the end. So thank you. I'm very happy to have any questions if you have.
So we have 5 minutes for questions. Yes.
I would like to stress a point. Maybe it was implicit in your talk, but just to ask you, just linking the science career awareness to what's happening in the world, because it changes. You talked about the environment, but about the causes, we have waves in which we have suddenly about the high-tech positions. Then, as you said, the medical doctors and lawyers, they are the dream of every mother. But it's constant, but then it's not the dream of the young people. So how, just finding, as a mirror of the culture and what economical and social happenings in the world. So can you just elaborate on it a little bit?
Yes, I can try, but that's a good point. That it seems that we have a lot of students who are just maybe it's coming from the family or somewhere from the society that they want to be a doctor or a lawyer or economics, that they have these three options to go with, and they do not necessarily think it any further. It's since they were 5 or 6 years old, they often talk about it. Whereas then we have these other STEM people who actually work with their ideas throughout the school years and often end up doing engineering and technology because of it enables to have an impact on the world. So yeah, I think that's really something that we as science teachers should emphasize, that it's actually something that you can use for many different things and do some interesting stuff. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
So I had sort of a related question. Could you possibly go back to your model? So anyway, as you find it, the question I had is that the model doesn't show how
working anymore.
That's good. The model doesn't show how external factors impact my decisions. And I was curious why that isn't there, right? So for instance, today, with all the negativities, like at least in the United States, there's a lot of disbelief in science. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine down the road, that's going to impact a little bit.
Yeah.
So these external factors aren't there, right? So I'm just curious, right? Or in the United States, sports is a big thing, right? And no one mentioned sports in your interview, but in the United States, I can't believe someone would say, oh, I'm going to be a famous basketball player, right? So I don't see these external factors in this model.
Yes, that's a good point. This is a very reduced picture of the model, because if I would have included everything, no one would have made any sense. But yeah, there's a lot of other boxes and arrows everywhere, and of course there's external factors that are influencing learning experiences in the first place. They also play a role in our self-efficacy and interest and choice behavior, and they moderate the effect of interest on choice behavior, and like they have a direct effect and a moderating effect on various issues. So yeah, you're absolutely correct.
I don't think it's just a big choice, a big thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of little things you can have, but some external factors seem like...
Yeah, and also in a way, it depends on where you draw a line, but in a way also teacher can be considered as an external factor, yeah, who can actually have an impact on those boxes and arrows. Yeah.
So you, Elisa and Barbara, also mentioned the influence of families and parents to the career aspiration. So should we have better partnership with families? Should we be more collaborating and influencing the family members' ideas and the knowledge about the possibilities in career choice?
Thank you. That's an interesting question. And I would say yes, especially because the family members or the parents, they are always, by definition, one generation behind. So we tend to have some kind of a view of the world and future, and then we think that our kids are living the same world, even though they are not. So parents don't always have the most accurate information on the job markets or whatever. So yeah, that's a good point. Of course, then we have a question on resources, how to actually implement that into education, or where should we have this intervention actually implemented. But definitely something to consider.
So thanks. There is another question, so the last one.
Thank you, Elisa, for your presentation. I was thinking, even actually during the previous presentation about the alignment from Barbara, when we're discussing the process, is that in the model somewhere, because now you said that it is a shortcut, is there some sort of like self-reflection and self-awareness? Because it's not from the point like of interest, but like what kind of person I am, what kind of job would I like? For example, I would prefer my job to be outside more than inside, or I would prefer to work more with people than like alone. These kind of things that are not like topically related. And it's like it's a bit different direction, but it's like if we have a good visibility of different STEM professions, and like if there's a high level of this, what do I want in my job? Not from interest and not from like subject choosing, and then kind of this sort of alignment between these two categories.
Yeah. I would say it falls under the outcome expectations box. So if I choose this career, I will have that kind of a job. I can work outside, or I will be working 12 hours alone on a computer, or like many different things go under the.
Should be also aware about themselves,
yes.
which is a kind of different skill. It's not just knowing that this job will have it, but it's like what actually do I like.
That's a very good point. That where is the actual self-reflection process? Maybe it's there behind all the time. It should be at least.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's thanks again to Elisa for a beautiful presentation, and of course, happy birthday to you from all of us.